I'm Micah, licensed therapist, and we like to talk about horror here. This time we're talking about Sidney Prescott, the final girl in the Scream franchise. I'm real purple today. I love it. I'm not going to go through the entirety of all 4 Scream movies. This isn't about reviewing the movies. It's about looking at Sidney and her experience. So I'm going to go ahead and assume that you have seen all of them. And if you have not, go watch them. Anyway, I rewatched Scream 1 through 4 for this video, not only because it was requested, but because Sidney Prescott makes a very good representation of a very resilient trauma survivor. And she has like a disproportionate amount of shit dropped on her. She needs some serious therapy. Just saying. So Sidney is overly independent in some ways, and her trauma response seems to lean more towards fight, partially evidenced by her punching Gail every chance she could get.
So, how's the book? Well, it'll be out later this year. Oh, I'll look for it. I'll send you a copy. Oh! Any comments? You bitch.
Hey, deep breaths.
Oh, Sidney, share with us, please. Oh! I'll share with you.
Okay.
Did you get that all, Bill?
I mean, if anybody has a reason to feel paranoia, I feel like it's Sidney Prescott. It's real tough to assist people in calming down their nervous system when they have evidence that people are actually out to get them. Being a therapist in this situation would be very tricky. And honestly, I don't think that Sidney would go see a therapist. One of the standards for addressing trauma can be challenging beliefs that have developed because of that. And I feel like this doesn't work out so well in this situation because it never stops long enough for you to be like, I'm safe now. Sidney's never safe. Let's look at the information we have about Sidney. Sid starts her story as a teenager in high school who's grieving the traumatic loss of her mother, who was raped and murdered approximately a year prior. As a result of her mother's murder, it came to light that she was having an affair, and it's believed that the man she was having an affair with murdered her, as evidenced by Sidney's eyewitness testimony. Side forensic psychology note: eyewitness testimony, it's not perfect. You can absolutely misidentify people. So when people start dying again, she's faced with a reminder of what happened, her own loss, and is confronted with the fear that it is happening again. So as far as Sid's social interactions, she has a boyfriend, a best friend, a couple other adolescent friendships. But unfortunately, as Sid tries to be a normal teenager, she is bombarded by her past. And one of the players that is preventing her from being able to move forward from her past is Gail Weathers, news reporter. Because of this constant reminder of everything that has happened to her, she does not have time to effectively grieve and process her trauma. She's not able to process the trauma associated with the newest murder of Casey in the beginning of the movie. Sid can't get away from the problem because of publicity and because of her involvement in identifying Cotton Weary as the murderer of her mother. So then, of course, Ghostface attacks Sidney and chases her around her house. Suddenly, Billy arrives, and a cell phone drops to the floor. So because he drops his cell phone and Sidney had, of course, talked to Ghostface on the phone, she immediately is like, oh no, you get out. So he gets arrested and taken away because she's like, no, fuck you, don't come in my house like this, boy. That's verbatim. Ultimately, to make a long story short, she has another significant traumatic experience, furthering her mistrust in others around her. Obviously, Billy was a dick. Billy murdered her mother with the assistance of his friend Stu. So it was like a wolf in sheep's clothing.
Corn syrup. Same stuff they use for pig's blood in Carrie.
Please.
Surprise, Sidney.
Turns out Billy was plotting revenge because Sid's mom had also had an affair with Billy's dad, and the mom, it was just a bunch of family drama. Sidney kills Billy, which is another layer of trauma that I don't think people think about in movies because we're just like, oh, it's a bad guy and they're dead, so it's cool. But no, like, it still messes people up to like kill people even if they had to. Skeet Ulrich though, right? Billy was emotionally abusive and like literally tried to kill her. He was very manipulative, and that alone, without all the murders and stuff, is enough to give somebody some significant complex trauma. She's got some multi-layered trauma here, but she survives. So moving on to Scream 2, Sid goes to college. And she has invested in caller ID, which is strange to look back and see that that wasn't always a thing, but it wasn't. She's invested in caller ID because people are awful and are apparently calling her and harassing her all the time. I mean, that's accurate. People are awful. She continues to have to deal with the publicity from her real life trauma in the form of a movie. And the movie franchise within Scream is named Stab. So then it starts happening again. Someone is murdered at a viewing of Stab 2. I don't know where we're at in this. One of the things that stuck out to me when I was watching Scream 2 is the fact that Sidney's case is so high profile that she was getting a whole lot of protection that I just don't see happening in real life under most circumstances. I don't know. Maybe. She's essentially got some bodyguards following her around who do not do a good job and allow shit to happen. So there's that. Traditionally, like in all of the Scream movies, you don't really know who's doing what and where until the end. And long story short, Billy's mom meets up with Mickey, who is a friend of her boyfriend.
Mrs. Loomis? What?
Billy's mother!
Kind of a throwback to the boyfriend situation there. One of the things about this point in Sid's life is that she actually has a boyfriend who is not a psychopathic murderer and trying to ruin her life, which we don't find out until he is murdered by his friend, one of the real culprits. So yeah, Sid kills more people. Gail and Dewey are in the mix like always. They're kind of buddies at this point, sort of. You can see how this continued trauma is influencing Sid's behavior and decision making. So Sid's got issues within her family growing up. She's got significant traumatic loss, experiences of murder, attack, real threats of violence against herself and everybody that she cares about. Then she goes to college where people are harassing her because they think it's funny, and then it's not over. And so now she has to deal with the person who was trying to kill her to begin with, mother trying to kill her in revenge for killing him. That's a lot of shit. All right, Scream 3. We move forward, and Sid's a crisis counselor now. She's still wearing the Greek letters that her boyfriend gave her from her previous experience in college. I assume that's because of her issues that would spawn from having a partner who did all of these things. And looking at you, Billy. She holds on to his letters for sentimental value, and probably as evidence that not everybody is going to try to kill her. So there's more Stab sequels, of course, because meta. And I think that while Sid was trying to help others and make meaning from her experience, she probably should have gotten some counseling herself first before trying to do that. I guess in theory we don't know that she didn't, but it's never shown in any of the Scream movies that she gets help. You don't go through that amount of stuff and just get over it on your own, in my opinion. I mean, we find out that Sid's mom had even more secrets. Sid's mom is a gift that keeps on giving for Sidney. Here's Sid being like, what the fuck? Okay, so now apparently my mom was in Hollywood and was assaulted somehow. She was an actress of some kind, and this has come back because of one of the Stab movie sequels, which most of the movie takes place on that set. And Sidney is seeing what she thinks are hallucinations, visions of her mother. So there's like, mom is involved. So here she is having dreams, very PTSD-esque. She's, of course, hypervigilant. She's like that throughout all of the movies, rightfully so. So yeah, again, not analyzing the movies themselves. This time, Ghostface is Sid's half-brother. It's kind of got some, like, soap opera twist vibes, I guess. She didn't know about this half-brother, of course. This half being presumably a result of the assault that occurred on Maureen Prescott by Hollywood producers, executives, whoever it was that was present at the party. He grows up, learns about his mom. He becomes a movie director and decides that this is how he's going to go about taking revenge on his mom.
I searched for a mother, too. An actress named Rena Reynolds. Tried to find her my whole life. And 4 years ago, I actually tracked her down. Knocked at her door thinking she'd welcome me with open arms, but she had a new life and a new name. Maureen Prescott. You were the only child she claimed, Sidney. She shut me out in the cold forever.
Seems like he's taking it out on Sidney because he didn't have a mom, which some older siblings, sometimes in sibling sets, will do things like that if they feel like they didn't get something that another sibling did. But it's stupid. It's like not child's fault that they were born, so Sydney's just been kind of thrown into this mix because she like legitimately didn't like ask for it or contribute to it. It's all just like shit that she's had to take on because of her mom's behavior, which there's some symbolism in that. We go through the situation. Her brother dies. One of the things that I made note of was that Sydney was holding his hand while he was dying to provide him with some comfort and some compassion. It was like she was recognizing, you know, this is my blood brother and he's a human and he's dying, so he deserves some level of comfort too, which is pretty big of her. I might have just kicked him in the head and walked away personally, but Sid's probably a better person than I am. The end. Actually, the very end of the movie, they're in presumably Sid's house where she works from as a crisis counselor, Gail and Dewey, and I don't know, I think there are some other people that survived or something, but I can't remember. And so the final ending of this part of the movie is showing her feeling very free, relieved from the experience. I think this part is intended to show some sort of healing has occurred. She like doesn't set the alarm and the door comes open and she just walks away.
Sid, we've been waiting for you. We're gonna start a movie.
What kind of movie?
You have to come and see.
I mean, it's good that you're not as scared. I will say that. But given your history, it's still a good idea to be prudent. You don't have to be paranoid. You don't have to be scared all the time. But maybe close the door. And honestly, if I was Sydney, I would be setting that alarm every single time because she very clearly has some like bad juju following her around because of her mom's choices. And for my fellow morbid weirdos, fresh air is for dead people. So in Scream 4, Sydney returns to Woodsboro on the anniversary of the actual murders because she has written a book. The book is written about her experience with all of the murders, and it seems to be a way for her to process the events for the trauma. So she's trying to help herself. Not a bad course of action, but I am biased, and I think you should probably still see a professional. In Sid's defense, though, I don't know if she could ever trust anybody. I mean, a therapist might find some reason to hate her mom, like had an affair with her mom, or I don't know how they would work her mom into it, but they would. Staying with family in town, it is her mother's sister and her cousin. In this one, it deviates a little bit. It's kind of like a new set of teens experiencing the chaos that is kind of mirrored in the first movie. And Sydney is older and is just kind of hanging out, watching it unfold, and can't do a whole lot. So I'm sure that she's feeling a strong sense of helplessness and survivor's guilt, which has probably been following her through this whole ordeal because she has survived over and over again, and so many people have not. So she tries to stop it like she does because that's Sid. She's not allowed to leave town because she's considered a person of interest because of how some evidence lined up. So Sydney's cousin ends up being the murderer. And the reason for this is she grew up in the shadow of Sydney. She had to hear about it so much, and it made her jealous, and her antisocial, entitled ass was like, I guess I'll kill people. Which, of course, backfires. So Sydney once again survived, lots of lives taken. Another person that she was supposed to be able to trust that she did not suspect had once again come after her. In conclusion, Sydney needs to change her name and move out of the country. Get off the grid. Get some plastic surgery. I don't want to be Sidney Prescott anymore. Done. Alright, so we're stopping there because I have not watched the 5th and 6th movie, which I do intend to do soon because I have broken the curse and hopefully nobody else involved with the movie dies. Ultimately, Sydney has complex PTSD. She really needs to remove herself from the environment, if at all possible, and get some like super specialized trauma therapy. I'm thinking like maybe even a combination of CPT, cognitive processing therapy, and EMDR, eye movement desensitization, and reprocessing therapy, which are 2 interventions that I use with my clients that I've had some great success with. We're talking probably years and years of work because this is years and years of trauma and betrayal and just chaos. But you know, she's done well. She's made the most of her circumstances. But being in almost constant survival mode takes its toll on you. In real life, Sydney would probably be having some physical health issues at this point. Too much stress. She likely has very mixed feelings about her mother The complicated issues with grief because of so many people dying in front of her, including survivor's guilt. I'm interested to see if she is included in any future Scream movies. Thank you, my patron friends. Check out my Patreon if you want to help support the channel, if you like this content I make. Patrons get a little bit of a higher power when it comes to picking topics for things. A little quick shout out to Creature Cosmetics, who I've included a link down in my description below. They are not sponsoring this at all. I just got some of their makeup and have been pretty stoked about it, so check them out. I'm a little superstitious. Oh my god.